in Iraq and Afghanistan. Outrage is rising in this country over shocking acts of disrespect to the American flag, particularly during last week's demonstrations in favor of illegal alien amnesty and against strict border security. Pro-illegal alien demonstrators who took part in massive protests against the Sensenbrenner immigration bill near Los Angeles last week passed the Montebello High School in Montebello, California. They took down the American flag, which had been flying in front of the school, and raised the Mexican flag in its place. And then they took the American flag and raised it up the flagpole upside down. A signal of distress, and despite the fact that dozens of protesters appear to be taking part in these shocking acts, only one student from a nearby school district has been disciplined. This flag incident is just one of a number of protests across the country where illegal aliens and their supporters prominently displayed the Mexican flag and paid a profound lack of respect to the American flag. As these protests grow across the country, school administrators have shockingly decided not to come out in support of the display of the U.S. flag at the Skyline High School in Longmont, Colorado. Administrators at that school banned the carrying or wearing of both the Mexican and American flags. Students upset that the American flag was included in this ban walked out of class in protest last week. So far, as of tonight, this ban on showing respect for the American flag is unaltered. And in Houston, Texas, a high school principal went so far as to fly the Mexican flag at his school, and then hundreds of students at that school walked out of classes carrying Mexican flags to protest the Sensenbrenner illegal immigration and border security legislation. The Senate could vote as soon as this week on major reforms that could lead to historic overhaul of our immigration laws, but many key issues remain unresolved and others not considered at all, from enhancing border security to whether or not illegal aliens could qualify for guest worker status and possibly even U.S. citizenship. Dana Bash reports on the clash from Capitol Hill. Dana?
Hi, Lou. Well, the Senate has been deliberating about immigration all afternoon, but behind the scenes, what the Republican leadership has been working on is trying to figure out a way to make sure that the division within the Republican Party doesn't make it so that there is just a deadlock when it comes to immigration on the Senate floor. So Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist actually went down to the White House today with two other Republican senators, Senator John Cornyn and Senator Jon Kyl, to meet with Karl Rove, the President's Deputy Chief of Staff, and also the White House Congressional Liaison Candy Wolf. Now, sources familiar with that meeting said it was essentially a strategy session to try to hash out how to craft a guest worker program. That, of course, is the issue that divides Republicans the most. How to craft something that could get the 60 votes most think will be needed to get this issue off of the Senate floor. Now, on that issue, there is one idea that the Majority Leader Bill Frist is floating, and that in general terms would be to separate out those who have been in the United States for a short time and those who have been in the United States for a little bit longer.
We're going to have to compromise and recognize that 12 million people is not a monolithic group. It's not a uniform group. Some have been here for 10 years. They're assimilated in our society, and they may have a road to a green card. But some of those 12 million people here, in fact, 40% have been here for less than 5 years, need to be dealt in a different way.
Meanwhile, Lou, Senator Ted Kennedy, one of the chief sponsors of the bill that passed the Senate Judiciary Committee, which essentially puts illegal immigrants on the path to citizenship, he went to the Senate floor today and blasted the Majority Leader because he believes, like others who support him, that opponents are calling this issue amnesty when he insists it is not. He insists that illegal workers would only get a green card after those who have been waiting legally and following the appropriate rules get it first.
And he said that our plan allows undocumented immigrants to jump to the front of the line when our bill says plainly in black and white that they must wait in the back. We should conduct this debate based on fact, not fiction, thoughtful policy, and not bumper sticker solutions.
Now, Republicans are going to meet tomorrow morning to try to hash out their many differences over this issue. One thing that's interesting, Lou, is that the Senate Majority Leader said over the weekend he does want to get this through finished by the end of the week, at least when it comes to the Senate. But I'm told in some private meetings, especially the one at the White House, it did come up that perhaps that is simply not going to happen, that there are enough discussions that many on both sides of the aisle think that they need to have votes on amendments they think they need to get through, that they don't want to rush it. Perhaps this could go past this week. Of course, the Congress will have a 2-week recess. Perhaps they're going to continue to take this up after that, but it's too early to tell right now what can happen, Lou.
Any statement as to why there is such a rush, why the Senate Majority Leader himself has put such a constrained timetable on this legislation, why the White House wants it now?
Well, the Senate Majority Leader has said over and over again he has set this timetable because he feels that he understands the main issue is going to be the divide over the Senate and the House. That is going to take a long, long time to hash out, and that what he says is that they need to get this issue from the Senate to the conference, and that's going to take a long time. That's what his argument is.
And no urgency attached to securing our borders and our ports?
You talk to Senate Majority Leader Frist, he says border security is his top issue. But all of those issues, Lou, I don't need to tell you, are main things that senators are debating. And it's not unheard of that even Democrats and Republicans say that they are very upset that this is going so fast. Lou.
Thank you very much, Dana Bash from Capitol Hill. Later here, I'll be talking with Senator John Cornyn, as Dana just reported, a meeting with the White House leadership on this issue. Senator Cornyn, for his part, says there can be no amnesty for illegal aliens in this country. There is a huge gap between the Senate and the House legislation on how to resolve the illegal immigration crisis and how to deal, if not totally, with border security, at least taking early incipient steps to secure those borders. If the Senate does pass an immigration reform bill, there could be another major political confrontation on the issue in a joint House-Senate conference committee. Lisa Sylvester has that report.
The House bill that passed last year makes illegal presence in the United States a felony and requires employers verify legal status of all workers. By contrast, the Senate is debating a bill that would legalize the 12 million plus illegal aliens in the United States and sets up a guest worker program to bring in even more workers. The House bill and final Senate version eventually will have to be reconciled in conference committee and signed off by the legislative bodies. But the gap is so large, many are now questioning if there will be consensus.
There certainly are House Republicans that are saying there's absolutely no way that a Senate version, which includes issues like a guest worker provision, would be able to pass in the House.
Finding common ground is difficult because of a time crunch. The Senate has only this week to act before it goes on recess for another 2 weeks. It becomes trickier getting an immigration reform bill the closer to the midterm elections. That has some worried Congress will deadlock.
As you know, the national policy as it relates to illegal immigration for the last 20 or 30 years has been one of benign neglect. We can no longer continue that as a national policy. The worst thing that could happen would be for no bill at all to pass.
One option supported by both Democrats and Republicans is to pass only a border security bill and leave the more contentious debate of what to do with the illegal aliens in the United States for after the elections.
President Bush was asked last week in Cancun if he would veto a border security-only bill that did not contain a guest worker program. And, Lou, he did not answer the question. Lou?
And one of the more important questions to be answered is why there is a greater emphasis on a guest worker program than on securing our borders, particularly 4.5 years after 9/11. Lisa Sylvester, thank you very much. Reporting from Washington tonight, a new CNN opinion poll shows illegal immigration is an important issue for most Americans as the midterm elections approach. More than half of voters surveyed say illegal immigration is either the single most important issue or a very important issue to them. There is a great deal of information in this poll and others. We've asked Bill Schneider to, as is his expertise, to analyze these polls and tell us his views on what they mean. Bill, what are these new polls saying about immigration reform, so-called?
Well, Lou, the polls on illegal immigration are extremely sensitive to question wording. For instance, an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll asked about President Bush's proposal to allow illegal immigrants in the United States to apply for legal temporary worker status. 59% opposed the idea when it was identified as President Bush's proposal. Then a Time magazine poll asked about allowing illegal immigrants in the U.S. to register as guest workers, quote, so the government could keep track of them, unquote. 79% like that idea because it sounds like a way to fight terrorism. Now, a poll of polls does reveal some consistency. Americans are intensely dissatisfied with the nation's border policy. 82% say the U.S. is not doing enough to keep illegal immigrants out. Over 60% favor taking whatever steps are necessary to guard the border, including U.S. military forces, and a majority favor a 2,000-mile security fence. Only 25% approve of the way President Bush is handling illegal immigration. 56% disapprove. But when you shift from border control to illegal immigrants who are already here, opinion is more sympathetic. Our poll asked, how much sympathy do you have for illegal immigrants and their families? 24% of Americans said they felt very sympathetic, and 46% somewhat sympathetic, a total of 70% sympathetic. Now, the Time poll shows a big majority in favor of allowing illegal immigrants already in the U.S. to earn citizenship if they learn English, have a job, and pay taxes. Should they be deported? The public is divided. Lou?
Interesting. Bill Snyder, thank you very much. Still ahead, the Minutemen are back on the borders, for one of their largest patrol missions yet. We'll have the latest on these volunteers' new fight against illegal immigration and a fight for border security. President Bush says illegal aliens need to be drawn out of the shadows. But I have a little news for President Bush. The only thing in the shadow, frankly, at this hour, is the truth. We'll have that special report. And why housewives are part of Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez's major militia movement. He wants the largest standing army in the hemisphere. He may well get it. We'll tell you about that next.